Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is all about the 8 mistakes to avoid when buying luxury. I have been buying luxury for many years now, and along the way I have definitely made my fair share of mistakes. So I thought I'd round up the kind of biggest, most frequent ones I made, along with some that I see other people making, hopefully to help guide you if you are just getting into luxury, or even if you don't buy luxury that often, to hopefully avoid some of the mistakes that I've made. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and let's get started. So my first mistake to avoid is try not to get freaked out by price increases, and I feel like this is particularly pertinent at the moment because I know Chanel just had another really big price increase. I know Louis Vuitton just had a price increase, and they've always kind of been around since I started buying luxury so many years ago, but they've definitely kicked up a notch in the past year or so, I'd say. I think I read that Chanel has had 6 price increases since the beginning of the pandemic, which is just absolutely insane. But my biggest tip here is, if you were definitely planning on buying something and you were just timing it right, then by all means try and beat it, but don't let the very frequent price increases kind of trick you into buying something that you weren't sure about anyway. If you knew 100% you were going to purchase something, that's something different. But if you were kind of umming and ahhing about a bag and you weren't really sure whether it was for you, don't let the price increases force you into a purchase, because that is kind of what the brands want. They're raising these prices, and as much as I think that their goal is to get to a certain price level, I also think it's just the most genius sales tactic. I imagine Chanel sales just shoot up every single time just for a price increase, and it almost doesn't seem to matter how often they do them because the same pattern happens over and over again. So if you're absolutely sure, by all means go for it, but if you're kind of umming and ahhing, try not to let that external price pressure affect you, because that's how you'll just end up making purchases which you ultimately weren't sure about and you only did it out of fear of missing out. Which brings me on to my second point again about price increases, but it is, don't let a looming price increase convince you to buy something on your credit card that you can't afford to pay off straight away. And I know there's a whole thing about credit card usage and buying luxury goods in general, but the simple fact is that credit cards are an extremely expensive form of credit, pretty much one of the most expensive forms of credit out there. And if you do put something on your credit card that you can't afford to pay off for another 4, 5, 6 months, very rarely will it work out any cheaper than if you had just waited after the price increase. I know it's a really tricky psychological thing if you know that a certain bag costs this much this week, and if you wait a week then it's going to be way more, but you really have to be careful and do your math, because if you did end up putting it on your credit card with the knowledge that you wouldn't be able to pay it off for a very long time, there's a high chance it could work out to be way more expensive than if you had just waited until after the price increase. So whilst I know it can be really hard, don't let price increase pressure let you put something on a credit card or just make a purchase that you can't otherwise afford, because very rarely will it work out any better. Mistake number 3 to avoid, and this is probably the biggest one that I've made in the past and I still continue to make. I try and be more aware of it now, but this is definitely my most costly mistake through all my many years of buying luxury bags. And it is, try not to make an impulse purchase just based off of one image or one video, one sighting, whatever it is, of one particular item. I would always say that it's fine to get inspired by certain things, and for me, always the biggest thing to convince me about purchasing something is if I see someone in real life wearing it really well. That can convince me about a bag that I had no intention of buying, and just in that second I'm like, oh my goodness, I love how that looks on her, I want to get one too. And that's absolutely fine, but if you're going to do that, make sure you do so much more research before. My biggest mistakes I've made have just been based on that one sighting or viewing or photo, whatever it is, and then me purchasing the item, really not thinking through the practicality, really not hearing other people's thoughts about the pros and cons, and really not thinking about how that bag could integrate with the rest of my wardrobe. And really it's also about just buying for my imaginary life versus my actual life. So I'd always say, whilst inspiration is always wonderful, it's absolutely how I purchase my bags as well, I always try and do a lot more research. I try and look at multiple videos and multiple reviews and just kind of listen to different opinions about that item before making an impulse purchase, because that is by far my most costly mistake, one that I used to make a lot and hopefully one that I'm getting a little bit better at. But it's always such a compelling argument whenever I see something beautifully styled. I always want to try and replicate it without necessarily necessarily thinking about how it's going to fit into my daily life and outfits. My fourth mistake, and probably the one that I still make the most today, is not really thinking through exactly how I'm going to wear the bag, the daily usage, and also the wear and tear associated with that. And I'd say this was probably one of the first mistakes that I made, and it's a really difficult one to kick because there are so many different variables that go into it. But a really good example is that very first purchase. So my very first Chanel bag purchase from the boutique actually wasn't my Chanel Jumbo, it was the Chanel Maxi that I bought. I sold it very quickly after I got it, but first ever bag I bought from the Chanel store, I think it was like £2,000, those are the days, but I bought it in lambskin. I did a lot of research about different sizes. I knew I wanted something really, really big. I got it in black with gold hardware, and it was just the most beautiful thing. And because it was, I think, one of 2 or 3 bags I owned, like my collection was very, very small then, I loved that bag so much, and I wore it literally every single day. That's all I wore, it's all I wanted to wear. It was my favorite thing in the world, and because of that, I just wore it every opportunity I could, which was every single day. It didn't even occur to me that lambskin wouldn't be suitable for an everyday bag, especially in that size. You know, the maxi flap is a very, very large bag. There's a lot of surface area, and there's a lot of lambskin as well. Within 2 months of daily use, I could see so much wear and tear already, and even though I was wearing it every single day, I was still careful. You know, it was my most prized possession, so I definitely wasn't knocking it around or anything, but I could see the wear on the corners, and I was just so shocked and horrified. As a result of that, I did a lot more research and realized that with caviar, I'd pretty much eliminate that problem. And so I made the decision to, one, drop down a size to the jumbo, which ended up being my favorite size, but also to go to the caviar instead. And that ended up fine. That was, again, during a time when they were having a lot of price increases, so I don't think I lost too much money. I did have to purchase the jumbo at an inflated price because there was a price increase just before I purchased, but I made that purchase, and it's the bag that I still have here today. So this is my very beloved jumbo. 10 years later, it's still going strong, and this is just a really good example of something that was fit for purpose and also fit for how I wanted to use it and my general lifestyle. I had used this just so many times. I couldn't even count how many times I've used this. It's still done incredibly well versus my maxi and lambskin, which, my goodness, was showing wear very, very quickly indeed. And I just really hadn't considered how much I was going to use it, what I was going to use it for, and whether it was going to be suitable for the daily use I was going to put it through. So I definitely recommend you consider looking at all the different aspects, from the size to the material, you know, general wear and tear. All those different elements will really come together and hopefully ensure that you make a purchase which is not only beautiful but also really functional for your lifestyle. And that's not to say it's always the bag's fault. I have here my Chanel medium flap in the white. I did get color transfer on it, and not the bag's fault, totally my fault. I got a white colored bag that I then wore crossbody, and I teamed it with dark colors. Actually, I am putting a little bit of blame on that dress, which did end up leaking the dye onto my bag, but I should have known better. You know, I've been buying bags for so many years, and I really should have thought through that use case. Previously, I hadn't really worn medium flaps really crossbody. I tended to wear them mostly kind of handheld or on my shoulder, so I guess I didn't really think it through, but I did on a whim, and then I ended up getting color transfer on my bag. So I would definitely say if you wear a lot of dark colors like I do, you know, I'm always in, you know, blacks and dark grays and just darker colors in general, and you know you want a lighter colored bag that you're planning on wearing crossbody, really put a lot of thought into, can I wear this bag multiple ways? Am I going to be able to avoid color transfer and marking and all that kind of stuff? And if not, then maybe consider whether that bag is the right purchase for you. Mistake number 5 to avoid is try not to get sucked in by every it bag if what you actually want to do is build a classic bag collection. And you know, I've been buying bags a long time, and it bags have definitely evolved in that time. It used to be that an it bag was just whatever Kate Moss or Sienna Miller was wearing, but now with the rise of social media and Instagram and influencers, it's a whole different ball game, especially as the luxury world's kind of expanded. You know, there are more luxury brands and more luxury bag launches than ever before. So there are so-called it bags popping up left, right and center. So it can be really, really difficult to focus in on, you know, what you actually like. So I'd say if you really do only want to try and buy classic bags which are going to last you many years, try and drown out that noise as best as you can. I think one kind of fail-safe way of going about it is really just trying to focus in on how much you're initially drawn to the bag. So really remembering your initial reaction before you're convinced by whoever it is, but really trying to focus in on the aspects of the bag that you like and whether it really resonates with you. And for me, my kind of classic example is my Saint Laurent Lulu puffer. So I have mine right here and I still love this bag so much, and when I first got it I was mainly drawn to it because it reminded me of the Chanel puffer bags that you used to have back in the day. Love those bags so much. I definitely couldn't afford those then. I saw this and I just instantly loved it. I've always really been drawn to that kind of puffy look, and I just thought it was the cutest bag. I knew it was going to be like Marmite though, and when I first showed it in a video, I remember I got so many comments of people telling me it was just the ugliest bag ever, and I knew I was going to get that reaction, but I just didn't care because I loved it so much. Definitely a big hit of nostalgia for me, and I just thought it was fantastic. It's definitely surprised me by how popular it's become, but nevertheless, even if it hadn't have become popular, I still would have absolutely loved this bag because of the meaning it had for me. So 100% try and block out the noise if you can, and really just go for styles that you're drawn to and styles that you know work for you. My next tip is try not to let social media raise your expectations to the point where it becomes impossible to enjoy the items that you own or the items that you're planning on buying. I definitely say I'm probably more on the fussy side in terms of whenever I buy something new, I like to look it over, check that there are no obvious flaws or issues. These are really expensive items after all. With that said though, I have definitely seen a trend in recent years where I feel like so many people are becoming fussy to the point of expecting absolute perfection, and nothing less than that will do. And that's often just really unrealistic. And so often I'll see, you know, photos of perfectly fine bags with no obvious flaws at all, and you know, there'll be loads and loads of photos. I won't understand what's wrong with the bag, and then there'll be one photo with like a red circle having to pinpoint what's wrong. And it's like the tiniest issue ever. And if you picked any bag from my bag collection and you gave me kind of 10 minutes to really examine every single inch of it, guaranteed I will be able to find something wrong with every single bag. You know, these aren't mass-produced items for the most part. Usually they're done in smaller batches, sometimes they're handmade, so variations are normal. And it's just unrealistic to expect absolute perfection every single time. But if you let that get into your head, it can really affect your enjoyment and drive you crazy as well, trying to find this unicorn bag which is totally perfect with no issues at all. Because essentially with most items you will be able to find variations. So just try and take, if you can, a slightly more relaxed approach to things. And again, I'm not saying if there's something obviously wrong, by all means, you know, return it, swap it out, pick a different item. These are still luxury goods, but try not to let those crazy expectations get in your head where it actually affects your enjoyment of the item as well. And I have my Chanel Jumbo here as an example because this bag, as I mentioned, is 10 years old. But every time I show it and I feel like it's done unbelievably well, I do try and show the wear and tear. And every single time I will have several comments going, oh my God, that wear and tear is awful. And I'm always like, are you kidding? It's 10 years old. Like, this is an amazing bag for 10 years old. Like, I've worn it so much. I think the wear and tear, even though it is visible, it's done incredibly well. But it's those kind of comments where it's just these unrealistic expectations of perfection that can really kind of chip away at your enjoyment of a bag. So it's always healthier, I think, just to try and keep things in perspective and don't let that perfectionism affect your enjoyment of the items that you own. My next tip is try not to let fear of missing out convince you to make purchases that you otherwise wouldn't have. And here I'm really thinking of limited editions and seasonal colours, and there's definitely a certain amount of frenzy and hype that goes along with being on social media a lot that makes you think that you need to purchase all of these limited items because otherwise you'll miss out and then you'll really regret it. And I understand the thinking because it's got me several times as well, and for that reason I really try and stay away from Chanel groups and forums because they will release, you know, these lists, especially in the US. I always see it, you know, the sample colors showing you what's going to be released that next season, and there's always a frenzy of people trying to get on wait lists and trying to source things, and it really does get into your head thinking, oh my goodness, like I need this bag, when really, you know, these are luxury goods, we really don't need any of these items, but it can really trick you into spending more than you want to because they are such limited supplies. And you know, that's definitely true of Chanel with their seasonal colors. I know Louis Vuitton do limited editions all the time. Same with so many different brands, and this is definitely a new thing. When I first started buying Chanel, there was no sense of missing out on certain colors or knowing exactly when new seasons would drop and getting on waiting lists. It just didn't really exist. It's very much a product of social media and being able to see other people's excitement and hear them going on waiting lists and having that fear that you're missing out. So back to my earlier point, if it is affecting you, I would definitely say to step away. As I mentioned, I don't go on Chanel groups and forums for that reason, because otherwise I see lots of beautiful colours which I would also really like, and it can really trick me into thinking that I need to make a purchase that otherwise I wouldn't have considered. And my very last point is to try and think about price point and also your comfort level, about what price points you're really comfortable with in terms of getting really great value for money and really enjoying the bag to its maximum. And I do have here my grey Chanel Jumbo, which I absolutely loved a bit, and this was horrendously expensive when I bought it. I think it was £5,500, but I think the current price now is £7,500, which is absolutely crazy, and it 100% affects my enjoyment of the bag. I don't wear this as much as I would otherwise, and I don't feel like I enjoy it as much as I would otherwise either, because I'm not massively comfortable wearing a £7,500 bag. And I think different people will have different pain points here. You might be totally fine wearing a £10,000 bag on your shoulder, but for me, £7,500 is really too much, and I wish they were like £2,000, because I feel like then I would just wear them with abandon and not care so much, whereas at this price point it's really difficult for me to separate my enjoyment from the bag, with the knowledge that if something did happen to it, if, you know, I tore it, if it got stolen, if I dropped it in mud, any of those things, how much money would be down the drain and how impossible it would be for me to buy another one. Not just because of the colour, but also £7,500 is just a ridiculous amount of money. So for me, it's definitely necessary to consider that now. The crazy price points that bags have gotten to have made me consider, am I comfortable at that price point? Am I actually going to be able to enjoy and wear it without constantly thinking about the price? And now so many bags are at the price point where I don't actually think that's possible. Which is probably why one of my most used bags recently has been my Lulu Puffer. You guys will know how much I love this bag, but for me this is kind of perfect in the sense that, you know, I love the style, I love my flat bags, my shoulder bags. You guys will probably be able to gather that, but it's also at a price point where it is still very expensive and very luxurious, but it's not so expensive that it's constantly on my mind when I wear it. I'm able to still enjoy this to its max, I feel, and it's just not a worry on my mind. So again, everyone's kind of price points and pain points are going to be different here. It's definitely worth considering what you're comfortable with, because that really is going to contribute to the overall experience. So that is it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought of the video down below in the comment section. Do you agree with my points? Do you disagree with them? Let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, please do give this a thumbs up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.